Ever wished you could, really get inside a classic piece of music gear and figure out what makes it special?
Ah, the secrets hidden in old manuals.
Exactly.
Hmm?
And today, that's what we're doing. Welcome to the deep dive.
We've got a fascinating bit of synth history on the table today, I think.
We really do. We're cracking open the owner's manual for the Yamaha TX7 FM tone generator. It's a MIDI sound module.
Yeah.
And well, it was behind some pretty iconic sounds back in the day.
Definitely. Think of it as a key component of that 80 sound,
Like,
linked to the famous DX7.
so this deep dive is basically your shortcut to understanding what the TX7 was all about.
And if you're listening, maybe you're just curious about vintage synths, or maybe FM synthesis itself intrigues you.
Or perhaps you've even got a TX7 sitting around, or thinking about grabbing one for your studio.
Right, this should give you the core info without, getting totally bogged down in technical jargon.
Exactly. So our main source today is the official Yamaha TX7 owner's manual, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
The definitive guide on how it was meant to work and what it could do.
Our mission, then, is to pull out the really important bits, make its features and potential clear for you.
Yeah, let's get to the heart of what this machine was.
Okay, let's kick this off. Fundamentally, what was the Yamaha TX7? Where did it fit in?
Okay, so at its core, the TX7 is a MIDI-controlled FM tone generator, basically a sound box you control with a keyboard or sequencer.
A sound module.
Exactly, and the manual really stresses its role as an expander for the Yamaha DX7 synth.
Ah, so it wasn't really meant to be standalone, more like a DX7 add-on.
It seems to be the primary design idea, yeah. To give the DX7 more power, more voices. It uses Yamaha's digital programmable algorithm synthesis.
Which is their term for FM synthesis.
Pretty much, yes. The engine behind those distinctive sounds. Now, inside, it has 32 internal voice memories.
Those are the actual sounds, the patches.
Correct. And alongside those, 32 programmable function memories.
Okay, function memories. What's the deal with those?
Yes.
They sound important.
They are. We'll dig deeper in a bit, but think of them as controlling the performance aspects, how the sound reacts in real time.
Like modulation, pitch bends, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Effect settings, too. The manual mentions effect data could be stored for all 32 voices.
Wow.
And it was built to share data voices and functions with other MIDI gear, especially those Yamaha DX synths.
Makes total sense if it's an expander. Now, you mentioned something earlier, or I think I read, something about a cassette tape.
Ah, yes, the good old cassette interface. A critical feature back then.
For saving your sounds, I assume.
Precisely. Saving and loading voices, functions. Bulk data storage before floppy disks or USB sticks were common on synths.
Lifesaver, probably.
Definitely. And one more thing the manual points out, early on, it's written like a tutorial. It really pushes you to try things out as you read.
Hands-on learning. Okay, let's get into the really interesting stuff now, the key features. You said FM tone generation. Can we unpack that a little, maybe without getting too deep into the weeds just yet?
Sure. FM frequency modulation. It's basically using one sound wave, an operator, to change the frequency, the pitch of another operator.
Okay.
And by chaining these operators together in different ways, different algorithms, you can create really complex sounds. It was quite different from the usual subtractive synthesis.
Subtractive is where you start with a rich sound and filter it down, right?
Exactly. FM builds sound up in a different way. And that's why it could do those bright, metallic, glassy sounds, but also surprisingly decent electric pianos and basses. It really defined a lot of 80s music.
That characteristic FM tank. Okay, got it. So let's go back to those voices and functions. Can you really nail down the difference for us?
Think of it like this. The 32 voice memories hold the fundamental timbre. Your piano sound, your syntholite sound, your bass patch, that's the core sonic DNA.
What it sounds like.
Right. Then the 32 function memories control how that sound behaves when you play it. How it responds to the pitch wheel, mod wheel, velocity, aftertouch, adds all the expressive control.
Ah, okay. So voice is the static sound, function is the dynamic behavior.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Now, the memory architecture itself is interesting. The TX7 has edit buffers for both voices and functions.
Meaning you can tweak them before saving.
Yes, but also when you select a voice, especially if you're getting that command from a connected DX synth, the TX7 automatically pulls up a corresponding function memory.
Oh, clever. So they're linked. Select a piano voice on the DX7, and the TX7 loads the piano sound and the right performance settings for it.
Exactly, designed for seamless integration. And here's a subtle point the manual makes. A DX7 had its own functions, but the first 20 DX7 function memories could map to all 32 of the TX7's function memories.
Wait, so the TX7 actually had more function options or range than the DX7 it was expanding?
It implies that, yeah. maybe some finer control or extra parameters available only on the TX7's functions, so it potentially offered more performance depth.
Interesting. Like some hidden power there. Did it come with sounds already loaded?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 32 preset voices, ready to go. The manual lists some cool examples. Acoustic piano, fat synthesizer B, harmonic synthesizer, touch trumpet.
Touch trumpet. Gives you a flavor, doesn't it?
Definitely shows the range they were aiming for.
And that cassette interface. Again, practically speaking, how vital was that for a musician back then?
Oh, hugely vital. Creating FM sounds could be, well, let's just say involved.
Not exactly intuitive sometimes.
Not always, no. So being able to save your hard work, your custom patches onto a cheap audio cassette was essential. You could build libraries, back things up, load sounds for specific gigs or sessions.
So it wasn't just backup, but also library management.
Absolutely. It seems slow now, but it was the standard way to handle synth data storage back then. Really part of that whole vintage workflow.
Right. Okay, let's move on to actually using the thing. The front panel controls, the manual diagram looks fairly straightforward. What are the main areas?
Yeah, it's pretty logical. You've got preset volume up-down buttons for the main output level.
Simple enough.
Then a section labeled Program Change Cassette. That's for picking sounds, obviously, but also starting the tape save and load functions.
Okay.
A dedicated store button crucial for saving any edits you make to voices or functions into memory.
Don't forget to save.
Always. Then the function buttons to access all those performance parameters we talked about. A mode switch for different operational modes.
We'll get to those modes, I guess.
And finally, the data entry section. There's a slider and yes, +1 N01 buttons. That's your main toolkit for changing values precisely.
The slider for big changes, buttons for fine-tuning.
Pretty much, yeah.
And around the back, what connections are we looking at?
The essentials. MIDI in gets commands from your keyboard or sequencer. MIDI out sends data onwards, maybe to another synth.
And MIDI Thatch RU as well, usually.
Yes, MIDI Touch RU is there too, to pass the incoming MIDI data along unchanged. Then the cassette in and out jacks for your tape deck.
Right.
And for audio, a main out EPOH jack, likely mono or possibly stereo summed. Need to check that detail, and a headphone jack.
Standard stuff. Let's just quickly go back to the volume on the front. How did that work exactly?
So it's those two arrow buttons up and down. The manual says you could hold them to scroll the volume.
And there was a display.
Yeah, a little LCD display showing the level from 0 to 80. It's a pretty granular control, actually.
80 steps. Okay. Now, the manual mentions two main modes, combined voice mode and individual voice mode. What's that about?
Combined voice mode is really that expander concept in action. You'd select a program, say number 5, on your connected DX7,
Okay.
and the TX7 would automatically select its own voice number 5 and its pre-linked function memory number 5. They work together as a pair.
Gotcha. Tightly integrated.
Exactly. The manual even mentions specific voice banks, A and B, designed for this paired operation.
So what was individual voice mode for then?
That mode basically broke the link. It let you choose any of the TX7's 32 voices using its own controls, regardless of what the connected DX7 was doing.
Ah, more flexibility.
Right. The display would show individual. Useful if you were using a different MIDI controller, maybe not a DX, or if you just wanted to mix and match voices and functions freely. More experimental possibilities.
Okay, that makes sense. So this leads us back to those function memory parameters. These seem really central to shaping the sound in real time.
They absolutely were. This is where the TX7 added a lot of its expressive potential. The manual lists a whole load of them.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so you had master tune, obvious enough. Play mode lets you switch between polyphonic, playing chords, and monophonic for single note lines.
Poly or mono, standard synth stuff.
Right. Then pitch wheel range and step controlling how much the pitch bends. Portamento settings mode, time switch for sliding between notes.
Glide or portamento, yeah?
And then parameters specifically linked to physical controllers. Modulation wheel, foot control, breath control.
Breath control. Very Yamaha DX era.
Very much so. And aftertouch parameters too. Plus things like limit key to set the highest and lowest playable note for a sound, and attenuation, kind of like a volume trim for the function itself.
Wow, that's actually quite a deep level of real-time control for a module from that time.
It really was. And crucially, the manual points out these could be adjusted from the TX7's front panel or controlled via MIDI from your keyboard or sequencer.
So you could automate these parameters.
Potentially, yes, using MIDI control change messages. That was key for integrating it into more complex setups.
And how would you edit these functions on the TX7 itself? Using that data entry section.
Exactly. You'd use the function buttons to select which parameter you want to edit, say portamento time. The display shows the current value.
Okay.
Then you use the data entry slider for big jumps or the yes, +1, and NO1 buttons to step through values precisely until you get what you want.
And then hit store.
And then hit store to save it into that memory location, yeah. Though the manual does note some functions like master tune take effect immediately as you change them. They called those direct functions.
Gotcha. Okay, let's switch gears slightly. MIDI. It's a MIDI module, obviously. What did the manual tell us about its MIDI capabilities?
Well, it could receive on any MIDI channel from 1 to 16. Channel 1 was the default out of the box.
Standard.
It supported the main MIDI modes, Omni on, where it listens to all channels, and Omni off, where it only listens to its assigned channel.
Omni off is usually what you want in a multi-device setup, right?
Generally, yes, to avoid confusion. It also supported poly mode for chords and mono mode for single lines, as we mentioned with the function parameters.
And what specific MIDI messages did it understand? What could it respond to?
The manual lists the key ones, note on-off, of course, velocity, how hard you hit the keys.
It's essential for expression.
Absolutely. Also, aftertouch or channel pressure, pitch bend, and then a bunch of control change messages, CCs.
Which ones specifically?
It mentions mod wheel, which is CC track 1, breath control, CC track 2, foot control is CC track 4, portamento time, CC track 5, main volume, CC track 7, and the sustain pedal, CC track 64.
So quite a few performance controllers covered.
Yeah, good coverage for the era. And importantly, it recognized program change messages to select different voices remotely.
Which you'd need for the combined voice mode especially.
Right. And finally, system exclusive, or SysX.
Ah, the magic SysX. That's for the deep data transfers.
Exactly. That's how you dump all the voice and function data to the cassette or load it back in. It's the language for bulk data transfer.
So the cassette backup relied on SysX over MIDI, essentially recorded as audio.
Well, the cassette interface was separate audio jacks, but the data format being saved and loaded was likely structured using SysX principles. The manual also briefly mentions MIDI data format, covering reception conditions, how it interprets incoming MIDI, and transmission data, what MIDI it sends out.
Okay, seems pretty comprehensive for its time. Beyond the tech specs, did the manual offer any sort of practical advice, warnings, best practices?
Oh yeah, the usual stuff. Avoid extreme heat, cold, humidity, dust, vibrations. Don't put it in direct sunlight.
The standard care instructions for electronics.
Exactly. Use the correct power adapter. Make sure cables are connected properly before powering up. Warnings about potentially damaging speakers. If levels are too high, avoid dropping it.
Yeah.
You know, common sense mostly.
Handle with care. Anything else stand out?
It definitely reinforces that close relationship with the DX series, DX7, DX9, DX1 are mentioned specifically.
Yeah.
It even notes some subtle compatibility things like aftertouch response varying slightly depending on the serial number of the connected DX7.
Wow, that's specific.
Yeah, real deep cut there. And a very important practical point, the internal backup battery.
Ah, the battery that keeps the memory alive when it's powered off.
That's the one. A lithium battery, estimated lifespan about 5 years according to the manual, and it warns that if that battery dies, poof, all your internal voice and function data is gone.
Ouch. So saving the cassette wasn't just for libraries, it was crucial backup.
Absolutely crucial. They strongly recommended regular cassette backups. The manual also says a change battery warning would show up on the display when the voltage got low.
Little heads up, nice. And speaking of cassettes, did it actually walk you through the save and load process?
Oh, yes. Detailed step-by-step instructions. For saving, you'd select a save number on the TX7, usually starting at 0.
Okay.
Then choose if you're saving the internal functions or the external DX-compatible ones, then hit the button to start the process and connect your tape recorder, hit record. The TX7 display would show messages like, Save Tape, TXXX, to confirm it's sending data.
And loading was the reverse.
Pretty much. Find the right spot on your tape, put the recorder in play mode, connect it to the TX7's cassette input, and initiate the load procedure on the TX7. You had to make sure levels were right, of course.
Sounds a bit fiddly compared to today.
Ah, understatement. But it worked, and it was standard practice.
Right. Okay, last thing before we wrap up. For the real tech heads listening,
Yeah.
any key specs jump out from the manual?
Yeah, some interesting numbers. The sound source is that FM tone generator with 6 operators, same engine complexity as the big DX7.
That's significant.
It is. Polyphony is 16 notes, which was pretty good back then. It used first note priority. It could also do monophonic with last note priority.
Okay, 16 voices.
Internal memory, as we said. 32 voices plus 32 functions and those extra 32 DX compatible functions. connections. MIDI in-out through, cassette in-out, the main audio output, and the headphone jack. Power consumption was listed as 12 watts for the US-Canada models.
Solid specs for an expander module of that era. Okay, let's try and pull this all together. If someone listened through this, what are the absolute key takeaways about the Yamaha TX7 from its manual?
I'd say, one, it's a powerful FM sound module, basically the sound engine of a DX7 in a box, designed primarily as an expander.
Right, the expander role is key.
Two, it has its own memory, 32 voices and 32 crucially important function memories for real-time performance control.
That voice function distinction is vital.
Three, solid MIDI implementation for integration. And four, that cassette interface, while dated now, was essential for data management back then. It was built to augment a DX synth, adding polyphony and performance depth.
For me, the real aha moment is understanding that interplay between the voices and the functions. It wasn't just more sounds like a preset box. It was about deeper ways to perform those FM sounds. That feels quite advanced for the time.
It really does. The depth of control offered by those functions was significant. And knowing this stuff, well, it gives you context, right? Well, you get a better feel for how people made music with synths back then, the workflow. You appreciate FM synthesis maybe a bit more. And, if you encounter a TX7...
You might actually know how to approach it or see its potential for unique sounds even today.
Exactly. You could integrate it into a modern setup for that specific FM character.
Okay, so final provocative thought for everyone listening. Considering the TX7's FM engine, its deep function parameters, and that close link to the DX7, what kind of cool, maybe undiscovered sonic results could you get by mashing that vintage capability up with today's DAWs, controllers, and effects?
Blending that 80s digital core with modern processing and control. There's definitely creative territory there.
Yeah.
A fascinating thought to leave people with.